Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to News Talk live here on YouTube. My name is Stephanie, and I'm delighted to be joined by David. Hello, David.
Hi, Stephanie. Hello, everybody, and a warm welcome, to a new version. We're live on, as Stephanie says, on YouTube rather than our normal home on Zoom. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. And David said it is a new home for us, but it's the same great content. And it's the same idea that really we want to give you opportunities to use your English. So every week we choose three hot stories, three very different stories that are making headlines all around the world. We ask you to comment on them and to listen to what we think as well. And as you're doing so, notice some really useful vocabulary.
Yeah, it's a great way to practice your English. And we think we've got three stories that you are going to be really interested in. And as Stephanie says, we're going to give you our opinions, but what we really want to hear are your opinions. So please write in the chat. Give us your thoughts.
Absolutely. So don't be shy, don't be nervous. Please do join in and take part. I promise it's a lot of fun. And it's a great way to use your English in a real and authentic way. So, shall we find out what our stories are going to be this week, David?
Absolutely. So, story number one, and greetings, everybody. Yes, story number one, which are now the most valuable companies in the world? Give us some names. What do you think? And we think there might be at least one surprise in there.
Absolutely. So we're looking for names of companies here. Type in the chat box, use the comments box to let us know what you think.
Yep,
Story
and
number two.
valuations.
Oh,
Sorry. Yeah,
sorry.
and valuations. How much money do you think these companies are worth, Stephanie?
Okay, so story number two, something different. What is the icon of the seas? I mean, there's a bit of a clue here with the picture, but what do you think it could be? And interestingly, why is it making waves? So, what issues do you think the icon of the seas might be causing? Let us know in the chat.
Yeah, and as you see, it's a pun, it's a play on words. Why is it making waves? Why is it causing problems and issues? And then finally, and this is so much, we hope, if you're working, this will definitely be interesting for you. We want to know which countries offer the right to disconnect after work. And does your company allow you to do that?
Absolutely. I think this is a really, really interesting one to finish on today. I'm sure lots of you will have comments on this. So that's our final story, concluding News Talk. But before, we're going to start with story number one. Now, remember, story number one, we were asking you about valuable companies. So, companies that are generating an awful lot of money, David.
Indeed, indeed. Any ideas? Any ideas, anybody, on what sort of money? We've got, we start off with million, and then we go to billion, and then we go to
Well,
trillion.
I was going to say, I know the answer to that one.
Trillion.
Trillion, yes. But how many zeros is a trillion?
Good question. And how else can
Anybody?
we say a trillion? Any
Yes.
ideas, anybody? Now, we've given you a clue to Apple. We've got the picture there, and definitely Apple is one of the most valuable companies in the world. But actually, today it is not the most valuable.
Absolutely. So guess in the chat. I can see some answers coming through. Amelia, you've got some answers there. Amelia guessing Google and Twitter. Yusuf saying Microsoft. I think Amelia, you've got that one as well. Yeah, we're talking big tech companies, aren't we?
Well, that was what I was going to ask. Yes, tech tend to be tech dominating, and then what other sectors are really making money at the moment? And somebody has already mentioned the most valuable company in the world, and also the surprise company.
Yeah, well done to Milena. I think Milena, you got the answer there. David, how aware were you of this company? Was it, I mean, if we think about the other names that are up there, the other giants in the tech world, we're talking about Apple, we're talking about Microsoft, this other company, Nvidia. How aware were you of this?
Absolutely not. And fantastic. Yes, whoever said Microsoft, Microsoft is the most valuable company in the world, and it's worth over 3 billion. Sorry, not billion, trillion.
Trillion.
3 trillion with zeros, $3 trillion. Number two is Apple. And then I think it's number three, or is it number four? Number four is Nvidia, and Nvidia is a chip maker, and they make chips for all our devices, and everybody needs a chip, don't we?
Absolutely. And of course, Nvidia, a big winner in the AI boom. They've really cashed in there, haven't they, with the chips powering chatbots.
Indeed. So what they have done is they've actually overtaken Amazon, which is extraordinary. Um, because as we know, Amazon is the giant in all areas. So that's amazing.
Absolutely. And of course, these are American based companies, a lot of them, aren't they, David? Do you have any idea of UK based companies that are the big players, some of the big giants in the business world?
No, because UK, do you, Stephanie? Because of course in the UK they're way, 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 way down. I thought you were going to ask which company outside of these American companies in the world is pretty valuable, is right up there. I think at number four. Any
Is it
ideas? Anybody? I don't think we've had it in the chat.
a Saudi company, is it, David?
It is certainly a Saudi company. Sorry, Amelia L. Yes, you've got it. What's the company? Anybody know?
Oh, we've got lots of guesses coming through.
But certainly, yes, it's the Saudi oil and gas company, which is called Saudi Aramco. And that, depending, is sort of number three and number four in the world,
Good,
worth
Yusuf.
about
Yeah,
$2 trillion. It's just extraordinary.
exactly, Simon. Oil. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Interestingly, David, going back to the UK companies, which I did look up, but again, the
Mhm.
first one I'd never heard of. It's a company called Linda.
Oh,
Um, Never
not
heard
li
of it. But the other companies, Shell, AstraZeneca, HSBC, big names that we're all aware of. But Linda, apparently, industrial gases.
oh, oh, thank you very much for telling us, sharing that.
An
But
interesting fact there for everybody.
But of course, it's the chip maker Nvidia that was really quite surprising, because everybody is now supporting AI, and they are right there.
Absolutely. Shall we have a look at some of the vocabulary, David?
Yeah,
Okay, so as we're talking about these stories, do listen to the vocabulary that we're using. It's not scripted, but we do try to build in some selected words that we feel are really useful and would be great for you to know.
yeah. So we've got a lovely verb there, to overtake. Or of course, we know when we're talking about cars, one car overtakes another, goes past it. But here, the chip maker Nvidia has overtaken or overtook Amazon very recently.
Absolutely. Our second expression here, to back something. Now, if you back something, is NVIDIA has backed these chips that are used to power chatbots. If you back something, it means you give your support to someone or something with money or with words. So it doesn't have to be a financial thing, does it? You can back someone in a meeting, for example. You can support them with words.
And I think it's very topical, that expression as well, because we are in election year in the UK and the US, and there are many people who are backing Donald Trump, or backing Nikki Haley, or Joe Biden, even, to become president of the United States. And of course, these are all giants, these companies. And of course, we know, the typical image of a giant as a huge person. But in this sense, we're talking about a very successful and normally very powerful organization.
Absolutely. So, some really useful vocabulary for you there. So, moving on then to story number two. Have a look at the picture. What is this? What can you see? What is the icon of the seas? And why is it making waves? Why is it causing problems? Type in the chat. Let us know your comments. What do you think about story number two?
And also, would you, if you had the opportunity, would you go on the icon of the seas? What do you think about that whole industry? Lots of people I know absolutely love it, and lots of people absolutely hate the whole idea. Tell us what you think.
Absolutely, it can be quite a divisive topic, can't it? Cruising, yes, Amelia. As you say, David, people like it, people hate it.
And what about you, Stephanie? Do you love or hate?
Not a cruiser, no.
I've never.
That's a no from me. But to be honest, I've never been on one, so I could be judging it a bit prematurely.
Yeah, neither have I. I've never been on a cruise. Has anybody ever been on a cruise? Please do tell us. But so the whole thing about the icon of the seas is, yes, it's a giant boat for travelers. It's a cruise ship, and the reason it is in the news is because it is the world's largest cruise ship. It has just been launched.
I think that's one of the reasons, Amelia, and also I think it's that feeling of being being when I say trapped, perhaps the wrong word. It's that feeling of the lack of freedom. I can't go when I want, where I want to go, when I want to go. You're sort of stuck on the boat.
So a few questions for you, everybody. How about this? Think this, right? So this is a massive, massive ship. How many decks? How many decks do you think there are on this ship? And how many passengers do you think it can take at any one time? And the third question, how many swimming pools? I mean, I just think this is absolutely crazy. How many swimming pools on board this mega cruise ship?
It's insane,
Oh,
isn't
we've
it?
got we've got very different ones. Not 30 and not four, but somewhere in between the number of decks, the number of floors on the ships.
And the features that these ships have are incredible, aren't they, David?
They are. So it's actually got 20 decks and swimming seven swimming pools and a water park. How about that? And it's got an ice skating rink and a beach club. It's just bonkers, isn't it?
It's absolutely incredible. Waterfalls, slides, water parks, as you said, David. I mean, David, does this appeal to you, this kind of everything in one place
I
type
mean,
of
it's like
idea?
it must be in it's a mini city, isn't it? And I just don't get the concept because when these ships go into a port, it must take so long to moor and then to for everybody to disembark before they can go and do the trips. I know
You see,
they're
this
very
is yeah,
efficient.
this is what I've heard. The queues that the amount of time you have to wait just to get off the boat, and then when you do, you're in a crowd with other people. And then of course you've got to come back at a certain time and then queue to get back on again. I That's quite off-putting for me.
And it has. So it's got a capacity of 7,500 passengers. And if you add the number of crew, which is 2,350, that is a maximum of 10,000 people traveling traveling all together.
And of course, the second question we were asking is why is it causing waves? So we know that it's a huge boat. We know that some people like going on cruises. But what do you think? Does anyone know what problem a certain area are worried about? A certain group of people are very worried about something connected to these super large ships. Anybody got any ideas what kind of area we might be talking about here?
Yeah, it's something that's come under a bit of scrutiny at the moment, isn't it? And especially today with all the concerns we have that everybody has about the environment.
Big clue there. We're talking environmental concerns. Any ideas? It's a, we've talked a lot about the environment in previous news talks. Obviously, it's a very, very important issue. Pollution, not animals in the sea, but yes, a type of pollution there, Amelia.
Yeah, yeah, and and the harm it causes. It's it's something that is again it's quite surprising. And there are groups that are really very angry and protesting about what potentially will happen because of this ship and the sailing.
Yeah, it's methane emissions, I think specifically, isn't it? Which of course are harmful. Apparently, methane is um, 80 times worse over a long period of time than carbon dioxide. So very harmful, and certain groups worried about leaking into the environment as a result of these super large ships. I think, Amelia, it happens when the engines leak methane gas during the combustion process. I think that's when this leak can occur.
Yeah, so they use they don't use oil, it's gas, and it's called liquefied natural gas, NLG. And the problem, I think, is that this emits, as I think you're saying, 120% more than normal greenhouse gas emissions, than marine gas oil, which is the normal oil that they use for ships.
Absolutely. So, shall we have a look at the vocabulary here?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this was the question we asked. What is the icon of the seas and why is it making waves? Well, it's the world's largest cruise ship. I wonder for how long, because whenever we say it's the largest something, someone comes and builds a bigger one or a taller one. But at the moment, this is the world's largest cruise ship. And environmentalists very concerned that it's going to leak harmful methane into the atmosphere.
Yeah, and as we said, it's been coming under scrutiny. To come under scrutiny is to be subjected to a careful and detailed examination. So it's more independent. Obviously, the builders of the cruise ship will have their arguments, but then independent or other reviewers will also look at the actual details of what is happening.
And our second word, we use this a lot in that when we were just talking, to leak, also a noun, a leak. But if something is leaking, it's allowing liquid or gas to escape. And of course, you don't want this to happen. So that's the verb to leak.
Yeah, and harmful. Stefan was talking about the harmful gases, I think. And harmful is when it causes damage or injury to somebody or something, especially when we're talking about somebody's health or to the environment. And in contrast, we tend to use, so this is, we're talking about harm and harmful. Damage, we tend to use more for physical harm to an object like a car you would damage, but you would possibly harm a person.
An important distinction there. So, moving on then to our final story. Really interesting one. This, we really want to know what happens where you are, and also what do you think about this? The question is, which countries offer the right to disconnect after work? Is your country one of them?
Yeah, and this story has come in the news because there's another country that is considering introducing they're proposing a new bill. And these bills are intended to become law to protect workers. And it's very relevant, particularly in today's world when people work remotely. I don't know, does anybody, because we work remotely, Stephanie and I work remotely, do you? Or do you work in an office? Because I think if you work in an office, it's probably easier. You know, you have your work schedule, and then at 5 o'clock is the traditional time in the UK. You finish work, and so you can leave everything behind. If you work from home or remotely, I think it's more difficult to do that.
And that's a good point, Amelia. I mean, I think we're talking here being disconnected from work. So you can still be online, but you're not responding to work related emails. And I think the point being that your employer at that point should not even be sending you work emails. It should be completely out of bounds, off limits. That's this idea of the right to disconnect. So your employer should no longer be sending you any work related documents to respond to. And you're entitled to have your phone switched off should you so wish.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know what does anybody have live in a country where there is a law related to this? I mean, in a number of European countries, there is a law, and there is a definition from the European Union, the EU, and this right to connect means to refrain from engaging in work-related electronic communications such as emails and other messages during non-work hours. So in the EU, this is already a right, but it isn't a law. So I wonder what the position is generally.
And interesting to know if anybody can guess which country was a pioneer in this. A European country that pioneered this in 2017. So, way before pandemic days. Anyone got any idea which country this could be? Amelia says she's happy to check 24/7. Well, that's great.
I think, I think it's when you've got that choice, isn't it?
Yes.
And you can switch on your phone and you can look at messages if you want to. But if you don't want to, then there should be no obligation and you can wait till the following morning.
Because I suppose some people might feel that they're continuously at work, and if their job is stressful, they're being contacted 24/7. There's no chance to switch off.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. And uh, very good. Yes, I believe it's France. Is that correct, Stephanie?
It
Was the
is
first
France.
country?
Companies more than 50 employees, this affects.
But there are other countries as well in Europe where I think it's actually a law. Um,
Yep, and with lots of other countries as well, they're discussing it. So a lot of countries have it as a proposal. It's a proposed legislation that may come in, but not at the moment. But it's certainly something that a lot of countries are interested in, and a lot of businesses talking about.
Yeah, and I think two nice expressions here. One is the whole idea is that you can switch off from your work emails and texts and phone calls that are received out of hours. A lovely expression that when yeah, out of hours is after work. And it also protects you from permanently being on call, available to your bosses. Another great expression, I think, to use.
So Amelia's told us that she's happy, but what about everybody else? Amelia's happy to be able to check, and it is personal preference. I think a lot depends on the type of job you're doing, and how you feel about your job. I think that's a huge thing as well, isn't it? Because how connected you are to your job is likely to impact on how happy you are to be contacted about it out of hours.
Yeah.
So, what about anybody else?
Yeah, yeah. Simon's saying it's very difficult in my country. My boss says don't work after work hours, but in practice, it's very difficult. to apply. It depends on the context, but the idea is really good. And I think, Simon, that's a perfect summary of the situation and how many people feel. Because even if you get the protection, but the reality may be different. Because you as an employee, you want to make sure your bosses are happy with you, and although the rules say one thing, maybe you feel obliged to work in a different way.
And it's interesting, I think, isn't it, David, that the country we're talking about that have this proposed legislation, that several business owners have voiced their concerns and said that the implications of it could, in fact, be quite negative.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And they're calling it overreach. It's overreacting. But of course, they're the bosses and they have a very different perspective than to the employees.
Exactly, Amelia. You want to keep your job. So, yes, I mean, I think we're all aware that there might be a law, but actually, in practice, things can be very, very different, can't they?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I know, I think from the research I've done, I mean, countries like Belgium at the moment, if you're a civil servant, which is an interesting one, you can switch off from your emails, texts, and phone calls. And they're thinking about introducing the law, the same law for the private sector. Um,
Exactly, Simon. I mean, again, it depends on your job, doesn't it? Not everybody's going to be able to switch off. Some people have to be on call, and certainly, if you're a security focal point, then yes, a 24-hour job there.
Yes, yes, because you're quite important, I suspect, for the organization. Um, but certainly in Europe, I think countries like I've got Italy, Slovakia, Luxembourg, and outside Europe, not that many. I've seen the Philippines, Canada, and I think there's a proposal also in Kenya. But
Yes, I read
the
about that.
Yeah, but the reason this story emerged this week was because it's happening, or there is a proposed bill in Australia.
Absolutely. So let's have a look at the answer then to our question, shall we? So let's go back to the slides here. We're talking which countries, and as David mentioned, the latest country to discuss this is Australia, which has a proposed bill to allow workers to ignore after hours calls from their bosses.
So try try that one, ignoring your boss's phone call. So as we said, there at the moment it's a proposal. It's proposed legislation, and if it's proposed, it means it's suggested as a possible plan or action for people to consider. Right, so it's a discussion time rather than anything definitive, definite.
And then we have a bill. So, again, a very specific word here. I know we know it in other contexts, but here a bill is a formal statement of a planned new law that is discussed before being voted on. So, very important to have the discussion around the topic first.
Yeah, yeah, it's a stage before you actually get a law introduced, isn't it? And the implication comes from the verb to imply, implication, the noun, and the implication is the effect that an action or decision will have on something else in the future.
Absolutely. And there we go. That's the end of our three stories for this week. Time flies, doesn't it?
It does. But thank you so much for joining us as ever, and thanks for your wonderful comments. And we very much look forward to seeing, not seeing you, you see us, and chatting with you next week at the same time.
Absolutely. We'll be here, same time, same place, but three different stories. So please do join us. Make a note of the time, set an alarm, set a reminder. Join us next week to find out some more interesting English vocabulary on some hot topics. We look forward to seeing you then.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye bye.